Work and learn. Meet Light Meet Max. සක්‍රිය කර ගැනීමට MySLT app එකට log වෙන්න. Work and learn. Meet Light Meet Max. සක්‍රිය කර ගැනීමට MySLT app එකට log වෙන්න.
දසනකාන්තී චූර්ණය සහිත ලීවර් ආයුෂ් දන්තාලේපය දත්වල ඇති ප්‍රශ්න 10ක් වළකයි.
Tonight, security and diversification. Sri Lanka needs to ensure debt diversity when devising ways to strengthen national security.
Never be too dependent on any one country. Sri Lanka owes to just one country 52% of its entire debt.
Slashed. Fuel prices of Octane 92 and 95 to be slashed by 40 rupees and 30 rupees by tonight. Norachole Power Plant Unit 3 back online. Consequences. Social Security contribution tax to go into effect today. Experts say tax will serve purposes of generating revenue for the government, but at the cost of having commodity prices hike. Reaffirmations. Minister of Industries Dr. Ramesh Patrana says all measures are being taken to ensure plantation industry development. All this and much more coming up tonight on First at 9. This Saturday, the 1st of October 2022.
Vim Deera milliliter CA smart pack එක රුපියල් 85ට දැන් වෙළඳ පොලේ.
Good evening and welcome to AdaDerana 24's English News. I'm Andrew Bernard. Now in your headlines for tonight, Sri Lanka will need to ensure debt diversity when devising ways to strengthen national security, says Subramaniam Swamy, a Indian politician. And also in other news that we bring you tonight, the fuel prices, according to the Minister of Power and Energy, will be slashed by 40 rupees and 30 rupees by tonight, with also news that the power plant of the Norachole Unit 3 will come back online and has been reconnected to the power grid. The Social Security contribution tax also has gone into effect from today, with experts saying that the generating value of its income through the tax will benefit the country and the government, but will have an impact on inflation and commodity prices. Let's now go into your first story for today. The Social Security Contribution Levy Bill that was passed earlier last month as part of the government's efforts to raise revenues collected into state coffers went into effect today. The levy is 2.5% on the turnover of an importer or a manufacturer of an article, service provider or any description, and wholesalers or retailers of any article.
Budget 2022 introduced the Social Security Contribution Levy as a measure to raise government revenue and rebuild the economy faced with multiple crises. The revenue expected from this tax per year is 140 billion rupees. The bill was published in the Gazette issued on the 21st of June 2022 and was tabled in Parliament on the 6th of July 2022 by the Minister of Finance. The tax is levied at a rate of 2.5% on the turnover of importers, manufacturers, service providers, and wholesalers and retailers. The Department of Inland Revenue released a statement on the 21st of September issuing clear guidance on the process of registration for the taxable persons. Accordingly, if a taxable person's aggregate turnover exceeds 120 million rupees within the 12 months immediately prior to the date of operation of the Social Security Contribution Levy, they are expected to register not later than 15 days from the date of operation of the Social Security Contribution Levy Act. If a person who does not fall into the above category has a turnover exceeding 30 million rupees for a quarter, they are expected to register themselves not later than 15 days from the date on which the turnover exceeds 30 million rupees per quarter. Persons who have taxpayer identification numbers can obtain the registration by furnishing the duly filled taxpayer type registration form available on the Inland Revenue website. Others are required to obtain a taxpayer identification number and are required to furnish the form for registration for Social Security Contribution Levy to the Tax Type Registration Unit or Metropolitan or Regional Office. The levy is payable on a self-assessment basis in 3 monthly installments, with the tax due for a particular month payable on or before the 20th day of the next immediate month of that relevant quarter.
Now, with the Social Security Contribution Levy coming into effect from today onwards, experts expect the new tax to have several salient macroeconomic implications. While the tax would help furnish state coffers, experts believe that the tax could also lead to higher prices in the country, which is already grappling with high inflation. Speaking to AdaDerana English News, N.R. Gajendran of Gajma & Co. shared his thoughts on the tax implementation and what it means for the Sri Lankan economy.
Of October, that is from today, it is an indirect form of tax. It's a tax at 2.5% on the taxable supply, on the amount of the value of supply, which is calculated differently for each type of supply. It is an indirect form of tax, and most importantly, the Social Security Contribution Levy will be a cascading tax. It has the same features of the nation building tax. One significant difference, it has a cascading effect even for the manufacturing supply chain. So this is bound to have a cascading effect. So the tax, even though it's at 2.5%, with the cascade of one supply chain at least, it will be over 5%. If it goes through more than one supply chain, it will go up by more than 2.5% for each supply chain. This is a cascading form of tax. Price escalation would happen with this cascading form of tax.
The Minister of Power and Energy, Kanchana Wijesekara, announced that the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation will reduce prices of petrol 92 octane with effect from midnight today. The price of petrol 92 octane and the price of petrol 95 octane will be slashed by rupees 40 and 30 rupees respectively. The revised price of petrol 92 octane is rupees 410 and the revised price of petrol 95 octane is 510 rupees. But the Minister of Power and Energy, Kanchana Wijesekara, added that the prices of other petroleum products will remain unchanged. The Minister of Power and Energy, Kanchana Wijesekara, meanwhile announced that Unit 3 of the Lakvijaya power plant, which suffered a breakdown earlier this month, has been reconnected to the national grid. Taking to Twitter, the Minister said that both Units 1 and 3 are operating in their full capacity. As such, Unit 3 of Lakvijaya power plant, which was shut down on the 27th of September due to a steam leak, has been fixed and connected back to the grid. Meanwhile, the Minister added that the ongoing 3-month-long routine overhaul maintenance work on Unit 2 is expected to be completed by mid-October. Stay with us for more news after this short break.
අයිනෝ රයිනෝ පුතා හැබැයි යා ගෙදර නිදියන්නෙම අමෝතු තැනක.
කාලගුණය කොහොමුණත් රයිනෝ නං වහලට සේෆ් තමයි මුළු ගෙදරම. Rhino Cement Roofing Sheets. Then you know Rhino. I know.
Big 3.
Uber Eats මගින් ඉදිරිපත් කරන ආදරයෙන් අවශ්‍යතා ඇති අයට අත්‍යවශ්‍ය භාණ්ඩ පරිත්‍යාග කිරීමට වේදිකාවක්.
Welcome back. Now, India's Bharatiya Janata Party parliamentarian Dr. Subramanian Swamy is of the view that it is important for Sri Lanka to diversify debt when considering national security, citing the large amounts of debt Sri Lanka owes to individual nations. Addressing the 15th International Research Conference of the Kotalawala Defence University, he made these comments.
Sri Lanka has just undergone a major upheaval. And it was because of the economic factor. And in the economic factor also, it was a very small factor. I'm not going to defend under any circumstances the removal of people from office who have been elected by the people only recently in the past. That is not something that we can defend, nor we can consider this as a forerunner for democracy. If you are elected, if you run a democracy and you are elected by the people and there's no challenge to the legitimacy of that election, then they must serve their term and they cannot be forced by a mob to quit the post. And I think that is a part of your present national security problem. Never again it must happen, and for that suitable steps for Sri Lanka have to be taken. In our policies, there are some aspects which require special attention. First is that the policy must serve in the modern 21st century context. What are the objectives of nations in this present new scenario? Then of the objectives, which are your priorities? Then the strategy to achieve them, each of them. And finally, resource mobilization. Resource mobilization is a very crucial factor. It can be mobilized, but one thing is quite clear: never be too dependent on any one country. Try to make it as broad-based as possible. Today, if you look at the debt, Sri Lanka owes to just one country 52% of its entire debt. I mean, both internal and external combined. And that is an extraordinarily high number. And as a part of national security preparation, you must ensure that the country's debt, especially foreign debt, is never very much and as much as possible spread over a number of countries. The elements that constitute today's sustainable national security is, number one, economic security, political security, energy security. It's extremely crucial. Homeland security. It no more matters how big a country you are geographically or how small. Of course, if it becomes too small, there are other constraints that come in, but a reasonably big one, and Sri Lanka is a very big one. The size matters only up to a point, but today in the new technology, except for these endpoints, size is no more important for national security. What is important is this new technology. Innovations can do anything. A country of the size of Sri Lanka, with its history, with its intellectual structures, can easily become a country which could dominate the world in terms of influence. And that is in cyber world. Cyber technology is this 21st century's main atomic equivalent of nuclear weapons. And it will be more powerful than nuclear weapons.
Now, MP of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, Dayasira Jayasekara, said today that the National Parliamentary Council was established simply as a mechanism to empower and justify bad decisions taken by the government led by President Ranil Wickremesinghe. With this being the case, he emphasized that the SLFP will not join the National Council. However, UNP MP Vajira Abeyewardena said that President Ranil Wickremesinghe took proper measures to restructure a bankrupt nation via a National Council meeting.
ජාතික සභාවට එන්නලු මේ රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මහත්තයයි කැබිනට් එක එකතු වෙලා ගන්න වැරදි තීන්දුව ටික අත උස්ස ගන්න හදන ජාතික සභාවට ශ්‍රී ලංකා නිදහස් පක්ෂය කිසි විටක සම්බන්ධ වෙන්නේ නැහැ කියන එක මම තමුන්නාසයට කියන්න කැමති මතක තියාගන්න.
ජනාධිපති රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මහත්මයා මේ කෙටි කාලය තුල විනාශ වූ රට ගොඩනගමින් තිබෙනවා. ඒ නිසා තමයි ජාතික සභාවක් ඇති කරලා තිබෙන්නේ. අපි බෙදීමක් ඇති කර ගැනීම නෙවෙයි වැදගත්. එකඟ විය හැකි සහ එකඟ විය නොහැකි කරුණු එකිනෙක සාකච්ඡා කළා බංකොලොත්තු රට නගා සිටුවීම සඳහා ජාතික ප්‍රතිපත්ති රාමුවකට එකඟ වී යුතුව තිබෙනවා.
අපිට කන්න අවශ්‍යත් නැහැ කිව්වා. අපිට ඕන රට ආරක්ෂා කරන වීරයෙක් කිව්වා. දැන් වීරය හම්බුණානේ 2019. අපේ රට බංකොලොත් රටක්. හැමදේම බංකොලොත්. තමුන්නාන්සලාගේම ගමේ කනිෂ්ඨ විද්‍යාලේ අර ටකරම් පොල්ලතු මඩුවක් අස්සේ දරුවෝ ඉගෙන ගන්නේ. මං අහන්නේ කී දෙනෙක් පත් කරාද මේ හම්බන්තොට දිස්ත්‍රික්කයේ රාජපක්ෂ පවුලෙන්ම කී දෙනෙක් පත් වුණාද මං අහුවා පාසලේ විදුහපතිතුමාගේ දූ දරුවන්ට දිවා ආහාරයක් ලැබෙනවද කියලා නැහැයි කිව්වා කොහොමද වීරයාගේ වැඩ.
Now, Minister of Industries Dr. Ramesh Patirana assures utmost support of the government to development of industries. Addressing the annual general meeting of the Ceylon Desiccated Manufacturers Association, Minister Patirana also spoke of the proposed free trade agreement with China that would propel local industries.
our exports grew by significant percentage in our small way. So last year was the one in which we had recorded highest export income from the plantation sector. It came up to $3.8 billion US dollars. It's a significant jump considering the fact that we get only $12 billion annually. Out of that, nearly $6 billion come from apparel sector. But once you reduce the import cost for apparel sector, it's nearly about 3.5 the net gain from apparel sector. So considering that, it's the plantation sector that provides highest export revenue for this country. The coconut sector recorded highest gain last year, $836 million US dollars for the country. That was the recorded highest value, as against 665 in 2020. There more than 15% growth. Fertilizer fiasco was something to be blamed actually, not only in the coconut sector but especially for tea sector. That was an erroneous policy decision. Now we are coming out of that situation. We are getting fertilizer bit by bit. But despite the popular claims, we have had a record nut production in this country last year. That's 3.3 billion. For decades, that was the highest level. And also tea sector experienced a better production last year than 2020. We did have fertilizer last year, but our tea production was lesser in 2020. So it's not only the fertilizer, it's a multitude of factors. You have to consider one factor: our soil is little eroded and soil quality has gone down a lot. Not so much in the coconut sector, but in tea sector, soil quality has gone down a lot. The productivity in Sri Lankan tea estates are very low. So policy-wise, during last 2 years, amidst difficulties, we also took certain difficult decisions. We included Coconut Tree into Tree Felling Act. That gazette notification regulations out now, even though it's not implemented properly. On futuristic basis, if somebody wants to cut more than 2 coconut trees, they can't do it as and when they wish. They have to take legal clearance from Gram Niladhari and the AGA to cut more than 2 trees at a time. And also, as you mentioned, we got approval from the Agrarian Service Department to cultivate coconut in abundant paddy lands. That's also happening now. Apart from the production factor, we were also looking at different aspects to improve the productivity of the country. We have invested heavily to produce more seedlings in the country. So this year, 2023, Coconut Cultivation Board has doubled its production of seedlings. We have about 5 million plants at hand now. We improved the hybrid seedling production by a significant margin. CRI used to produce about 100,000 plants per annum. This year we have produced about 300,000 plants. We continue to grow. The planting material is available and we have allocated certain lands in certain areas. We have to ensure that we protect the consumers from one side, but at the same time, we should not discourage the exports. So we need to get more dollars to this country. We are on the backdrop of this financial crisis. We are negotiating with the trade minister and also with the finance ministry covering that subject of free trade agreement with China. Let us look at the pros and cons and go ahead. But please be rest assured, we will provide the utmost support to develop your industry on a futuristic basis.
Following the controversial imposition of high security zones in several parts of Colombo, President Ranil Wickremesinghe today issued an extraordinary gazette revoking the order. According to the gazette notification issued previously, the designated high security zones included the Parliament Complex, Supreme Court, High Court and Magistrates Courts, Presidential Secretariat, President's House, Temple Trees, PM's Office, Sri Lanka Army, Navy, Air Force and Police Headquarters. However, with the revocation of the declaration of high security zones, the Ministry of Defence can no longer regulate certain activities within the high security zones which were allowed under the previously issued gazette notification. Now, President Ranil Wickremesinghe's message for International Day of Children and Elders Day says everyone should join hands in committing towards themselves to usher in an era where all children and elders will be taken care of compassionately. The President further said that required measures for the care of those in poverty are being taken in a systematic manner and that he will ensure a developed country for the future generations.
Issuing his message for World Children's and Elders Day, President Ranil Wickremesinghe says that the contemporary world that adults live in is not the world children see, adding that adults should understand the curiosities of children wisely and should create a unique world for them. Moreover, the President emphasized that he will ensure that all children of the country receive a balanced and nutritious diet, while the required measures for the care of those in poverty and underprivileged groups are being carried out in a systematic manner. He further mentioned that it is the duty to take care of the elderly community who have made unprecedented sacrifices to preserve the country's betterment. Concluding his message, the President invited all to join hands in committing themselves to usher in an era where all children and elders will be taken care of compassionately.
Welcome back. Now, stocks fell in choppy trading yesterday as Wall Street closed out a terrible week, lackluster month and declining quarter that brought the S&P 500 to a new 2022 low. The Nasdaq index closed at the lowest level since July 2020, while the Dow and S&P 500 closed at the lowest since November 2020.
The movements come as investors have fresh concerns about future interest rate increases, prompting broad market sell-offs in an ongoing bear market. The Dow Jones Industrial Average closed below 29,000 for the first time since November 2020. The index fell 500.1 points or 1.71% to 28,725.51. The Nasdaq Composite was 1.51% lower, ending the day at 10,575.62. Meanwhile, the S&P 500 was down 1.51% yesterday, falling to 3,585.62. The index closed out its worst month since March 2020. For September, the Dow tumbled 8.8%, while the S&P 500 fell 9.3%. The Nasdaq lost 10.5%. An inflation report closely watched by the Federal Reserve released yesterday showed that prices continued to increase at a rapid pace. Meanwhile, Fed Vice Chair Lael Brainerd yesterday underscored the need to bring down inflation, saying the central bank is committed to avoiding pulling back prematurely on restrictive monetary policy. Quarter to date, the S&P 500 and Nasdaq wrapped up their first three-quarter losing streak since 2009, losing 5.3% and 4.1% respectively. The Dow dropped 6.7% in the third quarter and saw a third straight losing quarter for the first time since 2015. For the week, the major averages posted sharp losses. The S&P 500 slid 2.9% for the week, the Dow tumbled 2.9%, and the Nasdaq fell 2.7%.
That's all the news we have for this evening. Join us again tomorrow at the same time. Good night.